All right, it is time to welcome our second guest in a segment we call Dog Mom Biz. Jessica Pierce is a bioethicist and author. Her work focuses on human-animal relationships and interconnections between ecosystems and health. She explores the ethicality of pet ownership in the modern world, and she joins us now from Lyons, Colorado. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you here. We're going to cover a lot of territory. But first, I want to know, where did your love for dogs come from?
Well, I have to say I was born with it. I was born into a family, a multi-species family. My parents had 2 dogs when I was born. I was actually named after one of our dogs, Jessie.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I know, a beautiful Irish setter. So too bad. My mother was very disappointed that I didn't have red hair.
Oh no.
I know. And I just loved dogs as a child. What do you want for your birthday? I want a puppy, always.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I've lived with dogs since, I had a period of time when I was in graduate school and kind of getting life underway where I didn't have a dog, and it was very hard. So the first thing that I required of my husband when I got married is we are going to get a dog.
Wow. And what kind of dog did you get, Jessica?
We got a Vizsla, which was his compromise. He said, well, we have to get a Vizsla if we're going to get a dog. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what a Vizsla is at the time. I didn't know. And now I know. I'm not sure I would do it again because they're not an easy dog, and probably not a good choice for first dog to be responsible for in your life.
We had an Irish setter growing up, Sean. Isn't that funny that your dog had kind of a female human name and mine did as well, but he was always so happy and loving and playful and very affectionate.
Jessie was too. They're such sweet dogs.
Oh, they really are. Jessica, your educational background is just fascinating. But for people who don't know, who are watching, will you walk us through your education and how that prepared you for being the renowned and very well-respected bioethicist that you are today?
Sure. Yeah. And it's not the kind of thing where if you had asked me when I was 10, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would not have said bioethicist. Right. For sure. I would have said Jane Goodall. That's who I wanted to be when I grew up. When I was in college, I studied religion, and I actually went to seminary out of college to get a master's in theological studies. And I think it wasn't that I wanted to be a minister. It was that I definitely did not want to do that. I found the study of religion really interesting because it's all about how to live a good life and how to be a good person. And for whatever reason, those were questions that have always had a lot of pull for me personally. And also, when I got to college, I'm like, oh, you can actually study this. So I then got a PhD in religion, and my area of focus was ethics. And I got especially interested in a subfield of ethics called practical ethics, which is really about how to live now, not what did Socrates say about how to live, but how do we make the best choices we can now in challenging situations. And I was, of course, especially interested in how do we live in relationship to animals when there's a lot of conflict between people and animals and resources. And so the first job that I had out of graduate school was in the field of bioethics, which is it's a part of practical ethics that's really focused on ethical issues in medical science and technologies. And that I found it really interesting to think about scientific questions. I've always been very interested in science, and kind of surprised that I didn't become a scientist, but this was a way to integrate science into my work as an ethicist. And so I started out at a medical school, which is not the typical thing for bioethicists to do. And then got interested specifically in questions about animals.
That's fantastic. When I look at even your experiences and how you started out in philosophy and religion and seminary, you just see how everything builds and has worked toward what you're doing today. And I think although you didn't decide to work in religion necessarily, sometimes we have to experience things to even know what we don't want to do exactly, right? But
it all makes sense in
It
retrospect.
does. Yes. And I think too, if more of us would think of, like you are, like how to live the good life, I mean, that's just something that we should all be very mindful of. And in this case, with Dog Mom News, we're saying, how can we help our animals as well to live the best life possible? So I know that you have really studied in depth the human-animal relationship and connection. How has that relationship, from your perspective and in your research, changed over time? And kind of where are we right now in the relationship?
Yeah. I mean, speaking specifically maybe about dogs, because this is Dog Mom News, and dogs have been a special interest of mine. Humans and dogs have lived together for, at roughly somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years. And it's interesting to me that scientists don't even really know for sure how long. It may even have been quite a bit longer than that. They keep, every time they find a new piece of archaeological evidence, like a fossilized dog poop, who would have thought that fossilized dog poop would be so interesting? But it tells us a lot about where we were, where we've come from. And, it's always been a really special relationship between dogs and humans. It's been a relationship that benefits both of us. It's one where dogs probably were helping us acquire food, and in turn, we were helping them acquire food in the form of scraps and handouts, which we still do today. And, I think over time, the number of dogs that live with humans in tight relationship and the strength of that bond has just intensified. And we're at a point now where, almost 3/4 of all households in the US have a dog, which is, if you think about it, that's like mind-boggling that this animal has so infiltrated our lives.
Yes, it speaks really to the power of that connection and that bond between humans and animals that just makes it so attractive for so many people. I think not a day goes by that I don't have a conversation with someone where we talk about how we just could not imagine life without our special canine. So there's just something about, you just look in their eyes, and it's really just like unconditional love.
Yeah. It is a special thing. And as I explore in my work, it's also an ethically fraught relationship because, I think for those of us who, and I think it's the majority of people who live with dogs, love their dogs deeply and want to give their dogs the best possible life. But, it's kind of like being the parent of a human child. Knowing exactly how to do it well is really hard, especially when it's the first time you're doing it.
Right.
And there's so many questions that come up where you're just like, am I doing the right thing? And should I be doing this in a different way? And what does my dog need? Is my dog happy? Am I taking advantage of my dog, et cetera, et cetera? So.
And that's why we need to turn to experts like you. What a gift. I mean, really, since we've been talking about how relationships have changed over time, you just look at how the world has, in fact, dramatically gone from the outdoors to the indoors. And you look at how much time, dogs are spending inside. You look at how we're behaving just so differently than we did back then. So some things are the same, but a lot has changed. So what can we as dog moms do to get a better grasp and a better understanding of the things that our dogs deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I would say three things. The first one is we need to remember that our dogs are dogs, that they're animals. And I think often we overlook that because they're so part of our families. We almost think of them as little furry people, and we treat them as furry people too sometimes, which, in some ways for them is good, but in some ways doesn't really give them what they need. So remembering that they are actually dogs and learning about dog behavior. What does an actual dog do? And how do they relate to each other? How do they communicate with each other? What do they need? And then looking at our environments, I think you're pointing out that everything has kind of moved inside is really important, because for dogs, they're more, and people get upset when I use the word captive in relation to dogs, companion dogs, but they are captive in important respects. We keep them inside our home, which might be a very nice cage, but it's still a cage. They aren't free to move about on their own, to make their own choices about what they're going to eat or when they're going to go outside, who they're going to interact with, and what those interactions are going to look like. So I think looking at our home environments from our dog's perspective and trying to identify things that might be challenging for them behaviorally, and also then making sure that they're just getting what they need as dogs. And, I think one example that is often really helpful for people is just thinking about how much dogs rely on their noses and their sense of smell, because, that's a key point where we're very different as humans. We're visual creatures. We experience the world, and a lot of our cognitive processing is visual. And for dogs, a lot of it is olfactory. So really letting our dogs have the opportunities they need to sniff the world. And, there's one research study that I often mention because I think it's just so succinct. They let dogs kind of do what they wanted, and they observed how much time dogs spent sniffing, and they spent about a third of their time just sniffing. So I always think about it. If I'm going on a 30-minute walk with my dogs, 10 minutes of that should be sniffing time. And that's good time for us just to stop and, do a little deep breathing and
yes,
in the world around us and become mindful. And so
good point. That mindful living is so important. And isn't that getting lost today? Unfortunately, I feel like we are so drawn to technology and almost like held captive, as you were saying, more about our environment in that case. But in this way, it's like it's always tethered to people, and I feel like we cannot hear it enough, that the importance of mindfulness and the impact it has not only on us, but also our animals. So what wonderful advice to just stop. When your dog needs to sniff and explore, you take a look around and enjoy the natural beauty around you, or just like you said, do some breathing. That's so helpful. As far as technology, I mean, it's kind of a blessing and curse a lot of times. What would you say is maybe the biggest impact on our canines, and what should we be mindful of?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is it's a sort of side effect of our obsession with technology, is that we don't pay attention to our dogs with mindfulness. How often, and I've done this too, so this is not meant as criticism of other people.
No judgment zone.
Yeah, no judgment. But you see somebody walking their dog, and they're glued to their phone, and their dogs, in a way that's okay. They're each doing their own thing, but what they're missing is an opportunity to observe and learn from their dog what is their dog interested in. And I think it can actually result in some unfortunate encounters too. I've seen people who are watching their phone and not watching their dog as they approach another dog and person who are walking, and the dogs are uncomfortable around each other, and the people don't notice because they're busy engaged with something else. Yeah, so I think just being with our dogs is a nice thing to do, being present for them. You know, technology is that it's a huge and really complicated area. There are so many technologies now that we can apply to our dogs. Some of them are great, like you know, GPS trackers they can be really useful, good peace of mind if a dog, you know, as much as you try to keep your dog safely contained, dogs do get out, they get loose, and having a GPS tracker can be good peace of mind. There are some technologies that I find concerning, some that people might be surprised to say, to hear me say are concerning, but
sure. What would be number one for you? Maybe an example.
This won't be surprising to people, but number one is the shock collar.
Okay.
I think that is the work of the devil, put it mildly. And then, you know, I'm concerned about the use of bark deterrents and ultrasonic fences, because they punish dogs for engaging in a behavior that is natural to the dogs, normal to the dogs. You know, all dogs bark. Barking is a form of dog communication. And
what would you say is a better alternative? You know, in that moment, maybe say, okay, instead of, then try this. What do you think?
So, well, the first thing I would say is there's no, and we hear this all the time about things like, you know, losing weight, changing our habits. There's no quick fix. It needs time and attention, and you can train dogs to bark appropriately. You know, give them opportunities to bark sometimes. Teach them a cue for quiet, so that they know what it is that you're asking of them. And then if they're barking and it's bothering you, you can say, "Hey, how about be quiet instead?" And they know the cue, and they're rewarded for it rather than punished for doing something that they don't really understand why they shouldn't do it, or what, you know. The bark deterrents don't discriminate for dogs between a playful bark or a bark that's a guarding bark and so forth. All sorts of different barks that dogs might engage in.
How important is it for us to know a dog's currency? Because some dogs might really love the positive reinforcement of pets and good job, and others might really be treat motivated. So any tips there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I would say is I love the focus on what the currency is, and the currency should always be a reward and not a punishment. Dogs do not learn well through punishment. Sometimes punishment is effective in the short term, but in the long term, it's not a good way for an animal to learn. And that includes human animals. We don't learn through punishment either. So rewards and finding out what your dog is really motivated by. And the way to do that is fun. You get to experiment. You know, would you rather have a treat, or would you rather have a toy? Would you rather have a toy, or would you rather have some pets? And everybody likes that experiment.
So Jessica, I'm sitting here going, wow, so many aha moments as you're talking. And for our dog moms who are joining us, I really want to make sure that they know and that we drive home that you are a published author. You have authored and co-authored several books, including Run Spot Run, The Ethics of Keeping Pets, which is so important. And that was published in 2016. And then I understand that you released a new book recently in September called Who's a Good Dog? So tell us, what topics do you explore in your new book?
Yeah, so the new book is it's really dialing down into each person's individual relationship with their dog and how they can make that as ethically sound and fulfilling, mutually beneficial as possible. And so, I talk about why I think the human relationship with a dog is an ethical relationship in the first place, and talk about some kind of what I think of as guideposts or guiding principles for living well with dogs. I call them the 3 C's, which are care, curiosity, and collaboration. And then I go through, it's really based on my own experience with my dog, Bella, and who does not fit any cultural stereotype or narrative you've ever heard about what a good dog looks like.
Oh, wow.
She would be labeled a bad dog. She's, she doesn't like people. She doesn't want to be touched by people. So if you try to touch her, she'll lift her lip at you, which, she doesn't particularly listen to me unless there's something in it for her that she wants. She's the most wonderful dog I've ever had. She's a sweetheart, and she's grumpy and just spicy. And for a long time, I've lived with her for 11 years. And for a long time, I thought, there's something wrong with Bella. She's a rescue. She had some trauma in her past. There's something wrong with her, and I need to fix her. And I thought there was something wrong with me too. Like I'm a really bad dog owner because I have a bad dog. And I've come to realize over time that Bella is a good dog. Every dog is a good dog. And that the language that we use, calling our dogs good and bad, and the things that we label as good and bad are really, it's moralizing our dogs in a way that's really unfortunate for everybody. It's not helpful.
That's a really good point. And you know what, Jessica? You are a good dog mom. You are an excellent dog mom, and you need to hear that too. And you know what? You decided to keep her, which turned into a book, right? About keeping our pets. And now look at how this relationship is turning into another new book and sharing your experiences. And I love your humility, because here you are, a bioethicist, and you're an expert, but you're saying, you know what? I struggle with this too. And we need that authenticity today. And I just appreciate your heart and your willingness to share and say, hey, we may be struggling, but here are some tips and tools. That's beautiful, because ultimately our bond, we want to nurture it and keep it strong. That's what we're all about on Dog Mom News, helping dog moms nurture the relationship and really grow that bond with their pets. And the more we talk to people like you, the better off we are.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I do really go to great pains to be non-judgmental.
Yes.
I think people are doing the best they can. It's really challenging to live with a dog, and some dogs are more challenging than others. And it's hard to figure out what to do. And there are things, when I talk to people who live with dogs, they struggle with so many choices. What should I feed my dog? Is it okay to put my dog in a crate? How long is it okay to leave my dog? It just goes on and on and on. And so I try to just explore those questions and invite other people to explore them. I don't have answers to them. I have my own answers, which might not work for other people, but.
Oh, but you have to try. There's no set formula for everyone, but I do think we can say accepting grace and extending it. That's a big deal. And I think that's a lot of what you're getting at. And I love that. Are you more drawn to writing books or blogs? Because I know you do a little bit of both.
I do. It's so funny. I just said to one of my colleagues, I'd so much rather write a book than a blog. And he thought that was utterly insane, because
wow.
I think blogs are hard because they're so short. In a book, I have time to really develop the nuances of a line of thinking, and really say what I think, and then all the caveats about, about what I think. Blogs are fun too, though, because often I'll write a blog about like a new piece of research that's come out, a new paper. It's just interesting, and that I think would be interesting for people to know. Like, I haven't written it yet, but there was just a paper on vegan cat diets, which is interesting and very counterintuitive and controversial.
Yes.
Or I'll write about something, I learned, for example, that a lot of veterinarians these days have been starting to make audio recordings of euthanasia appointments. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, and also kind of ethically challenging, disturbing.
Yes.
Like, I want to think more about that, and also let people know that this is happening, so that they
Yes.
can make informed choices. And so yeah.
And that would
But I
be a
have
really
written more
great
blogs than
blog
books.
post.
Yeah,
Yes.
I did write a blog about that, and it was
Oh,
it
you
was
did? Oh,
I did,
great.
yeah. Yeah,
And is that on All Dogs Go to
it
Heaven? That's
it
your
is,
blog,
yeah.
right? Okay, great. So that would have been the perfect post for that. You've been at that, what, 11 years now?
Yeah, it's kinda
Wow, that's
scary.
a really long time. And I'm sure you get to cover just a wide variety of topics on
I
the blog
do.
too.
It's
Yes,
Yeah, it's nice. I can
fascinating.
write about anything I want.
There you go.
I almost always
That's
write
great.
about animals, but I don't have to.
Yeah, there you
But
go. It's a choose
now
your own adventure kind of thing,
it
especially when you're in charge. It's a beautiful thing, right?
is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yes. I want to just turn our attention now to the pandemic. I think we all learned so much during that stretch, COVID-19. So many of us feeling around in the dark.
Yeah.
So many of us wondering, how to get through that time. And, a lot of people that really impacted the relationship that they have with their animals. And also some people decided for the first time to even get an animal. So I'm wondering maybe some of the issues that you discovered during that time, and how has that shaped the direction of your research?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, and it's so new that I don't think we really understand what the reverberations are going to be. But it's going to be interesting to see. The number of people who live with dogs shot up through the
Mm.
roof. A lot of people, as you suggested, became first-time dog owners, because some of the barriers to living with a dog, like being at home,
Yes.
having to go to a job for 8 hours a day is not really conducive to getting a puppy and
Yes.
socializing puppies. So it's like, oh, now we have this opportunity to to bring a puppy into the home and to do it right. So a lot of people making that decision and or feeling like they needed emotional support. I mean, this is
Yes.
the time of the emotional support animal, broadly speaking.
Mhm.
Dogs have, I think, probably saved the lives of a lot of people
Yes.
just
Yes.
through the mental health services that they've given during
So
the
true.
pandemic. I think it's been a boon for dogs because people have been home, and
Yes.
it's also been hard for dogs because people have now started going back out, and
Yes.
dogs got used to having their family together. And
Yes.
that's really for many dogs the natural state of being. That's what they want most, is to have social connection. So it's hard
Yes.
when we're gone. And I think a lot of behavioral issues came to the surface during
Mm.
COVID. Whether they were because of COVID, I think remains an open question. But a lot of people struggling with really challenging dog behavior problems, like
Yes.
not pulling on the leash, but
More
much more like
serious
much more
issues.
serious, and a lot of separation
Yes.
anxiety now coming out in dogs. And
Mhm.
so I think we're going to be
Yes.
feeling the effects of this for a long time.
It can be tough. And I think, like you have said throughout this conversation, the importance of compassion and really taking stock of what our animal may be thinking and feeling. We are
Yeah.
not the same species. So when you are away all day at work, your animal is at home waiting for you to come and connect with them
Yeah.
and spend time with them. So you're right. The more we can just try to put ourselves in their shoes and try to give them what they need and truly understand each breed, I'm sure is huge, because what a Rottweiler needs may be totally different than what a pug needs. We just really
Yeah.
need to know and try to understand, right?
Yes. And what Rottweiler Rufus needs might be totally different from what Rottweiler Queenie needs,
Right. Yes,
Um,
which so true. Good point. And even your experiences with Bella, right? I mean, you said at times it's been really challenging, but I know you've put this into practice with her.
yeah.
I mean, what a beautiful bond and relationship you share, and I love how so much of that is inspiring what you're doing today. But I do want to get to some of the questions from our community, because when our dog moms heard that you were going to be on, of course they've got some big questions. So are
All
you
right.
up for it,
Yeah.
Jessica?
Sure.
All
Absolutely.
right. So, all right, our first question is, and this is a really big question, okay, but I know you can handle it. Do dogs have souls?
Yes, I
Okay.
think they do. I would say so. I have to be slightly, the skeptic. I would say
Sure.
if humans have souls, then dogs have souls.
There you
And
go.
I will leave it as an open theological question, whether humans have souls.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, and the big question, so this seems to be a really big issue, and it's a little controversial too, but I love it because you're not scared of anything. Okay, is it at the end
Yes.
of the day, is it ethical? Is it ethical for us to own pets, to bring them inside, to, in a sense, cage them in? Is that ethical at the end of the day?
I think it's a question each person should spend some good time thinking about. And the more I've thought about it, the more uncomfortable I have become with the practices of pet keeping. I will say, I think for me, it's easier to say that certain kinds of pets are problematic. For example, I think any animal who needs to be kept within a cage or a tank at all times probably has a very impoverished life and is not happy being your pet. And so reptiles and amphibians, birds, fishes. I think with dogs and cats, we really have opportunities to give them a fulfilling, really happy, healthy existence. But it's not easy and it's not for everyone. So I think there are a lot of ethical problems that every person who brings an animal in their home is going to face. And I hope that they face them head on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you just wish dogs had more freedom?
I do. And I also recognize that that's hard because we have to keep them safe. And freedom is often in tension with safety for dogs, just in the way our communities are set up now. It'd be nice for dogs not to need leashes. I think leashes are an imposition on dogs, but they're necessary right now in most places. Not everywhere. I'm lucky. Bella and I live in the mountains, and we're surrounded by forest. It's all legitimately off-leash territory. It's not. It's
Wonderful.
legal for dogs to run around, and so we're very fortunate. And I know a lot of people don't have such good access to off-leash areas. I think if they are available, it's a wonderful thing for most dogs. Not all dogs,
Wonderful.
but most dogs.
Yes, but most dogs. And if you have an opportunity, if they are on the leash, then let them sniff around and explore a little. Dog moms, do it and be present.
Yes. And I think we can be really creative in finding ways to give them more freedom. They might be small ways, but just giving them more control over the choices that they make. throughout the day. And even although this might sound scary or counterintuitive to people, I think giving dogs the option to say no to something like a training session, just like,
Okay.
They should have the option to walk away if they're uncomfortable or don't want to do it. So I guess it's on us to make it engaging and fun enough that they want to do it, and not something that we impose on them and against their will. And things like grooming, dental care, those can be really uncomfortable and scary for dogs if they involve like forceful physical restraint. And luckily, with most dogs, you can train them to cooperate and collaborate with you in those endeavors. They might not like it that much, but they will be willing to do it because they love you and because there are lots of good treats waiting on the other side.
Oh, there you go. All the rewards that we talked about. I love it. Jessica, thank you. Thank you for being a trooper and answering the hard questions. You really handled that so well. What is the best way for our audience to keep informed as to what's going on with you? The books that you publish, the blogs that you write, what's the best way for them to stay informed?
So I have a website. It's just jessicapierce.net, easy to find. And then my blog is called All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's on Psychology Today. That's really easy to find too, just Googling those things or just Googling my name.
There we go. Awesome. Jessica Pierce, author, bioethicist. Your new book is called Who's a Good Dog? So dog moms, be sure to pick it up if you're looking to deepen the relationship that you have with your dog, and we know you are. So go ahead and be sure to get your copy. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Thanks so much for watching this Dog Mom News clip. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more awesome and informative Dog Mom News content. And while you're at it, ring the bell so that you can find out about more content in real time. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, everyone.